Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. I'm your host, Luke, the Elder Bean. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good, as per usual. Today, we're going to be looking at Monster Blood, Book 3, in the classic Goosebumps series. But before we do all of that and more, let's do a bit of housekeeping, because I like to keep my house nice and clean. And because there's monster blood everywhere, it's growing at a very rapid, quick rate. And I think it's going to overtake and kill me, to be honest, and just absorb me into this vile goo. And I don't really want to do that. So to prevent that from happening, I'm going to need your support. So what you can do is you can follow me at Twitter at howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to give me a follow, leave a 5-star rating on the podcast. And also, you can find me on TikTok now. So just type in the Howdy Beans podcast and you'll find me there. So, as I mentioned, this is part of my Goosebumps series. So what I had originally planned, for anybody who is starting with this episode, welcome. Thank you for joining me here. For anybody that's been joining this journey so far, basically, the long and short of it, I have decided that I want to look into the first 16 books in the original Goosebumps run, primarily because I'm able to tell that the first 16 novels were written by R.L. Stine, and there's a little bit of contention basically that afterwards Stine ghostwrote a lot of them, which means he didn't write them. He did the outline, or he would come up with the idea and concept, and then another author would come in and fill in the gaps, and he would fix it in, he'd do his edit, and then it would be sort of R.L. Stine. Again, I've done all sort of I went into really deep into all of that in my first book review that I did for Welcome to Dead House. So if you want to know the full facts behind that, please do check that episode if you haven't. But today we're going to be looking at Book 3, Monster Blood. This is going to be the final Goosebumps book I look at this year. So if you've been enjoying it so far, thank you very much. And again, if you haven't subscribed and followed me on Spotify and all that, and you want to see more Goosebumps stuff for me next year, make sure that you do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've got a lot to say about this one, but I'll leave that for a second. First, I want to do the book synopsis. So it goes as follows. So on the blurb at the back of the book, it says, blood everywhere. While staying with his weird great-aunt Catherine, Evan visits a funky old toy store and buys a dusty can of Monster Blood. It's fun to play with at first, and Evan's dog Trigger likes it so much he eats some. But then even Evan notices something weird about the green slimy stuff. It seems to be growing and growing and growing, and all that growing has given the Monster Blood a monstrous appetite. So that is the synopsis for the story. As for sort of my first impressions, I'm very, very, very conflicted because I've got a lot of very conflicting and very weird thoughts about this book. Primarily, to be honest, is the fact of I am 66% of the way through. So I'm almost more than half. Like these books are only short. They're not very long books, right? I'm almost halfway, probably a bit more, to finishing this book. And I'm sitting there thinking, when does it get good? Like, when does it start getting interesting? When do the Monster Blood start taking over? And I know like the Goosebumps series, it's huge. So you're going to find diamonds, but you're also going to have a few that are a bit not as good as the other ones. But I just thought, after like the amazing, incredible sort of stories that I've gotten so far with Welcome to Dead House and the one I read prior to this one, which I believe was, what was it called again now? My whole brain's just gone to mush. What was it before this one? Saturday Basement, that's what it was. So, with those books and how incredible they were and how much fun I had with them, I was kind of hoping that this train would carry on. And it hasn't really. And the reason I'm so conflicted is because I'm questioning myself. I'm sitting there thinking, well, maybe it's a slow burn. Maybe it's a book in terms, because it feels like Stephen King. Because anybody who's read Stephen King, a lot of his books are very slow burners. Like, they take a while to get into them. Some of them grab you straight away. Some of you grab you halfway, and some probably don't grab you at all, or don't grab you near to the end. But there's always a hook, and it will always grab onto you and latch on, and it'll pull you on the rest of the way. Because there are times, like I said, it feels like Stephen King. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, is it a slow burn? Is it one of those books that will slowly start to reel you in, and then at the end you have the big sort of monster. I'm not sure, because like the other two books were really different. So when I read Welcome to Dead House, that was like that was a ghost story with a bit of undead zombie sort of thing. It was brilliant. It was great. It was different in tone. It felt different. It was horror, but it was its own thing. Then I read Stay at the Basement, and that was, to me, was more like a mystery. Was trying to figure out what's happening in the basement. It wasn't scary. It was just more the fact of what has happened to Dad. What has happened to, is he Dad, or is he a clone, or is he a plant? This sort of thing. And so that has a different tone. That feels like a completely different genre of book. And I'm sitting and thinking, well, is this a slow burner? Is this one of these that just takes time to get going? Because in the other books, it's almost straight away in the first book when they start seeing ghosts and they start getting haunted and things like that. Again, in the second book, it's almost straight away where the young girl, she's told straight away, like, don't go into the basement, don't go in. And they go into the basement, not even like really pretty much at the beginning of the story, and they start seeing these weird plants and things and stuff like that. So it's one of those where I'm thinking, why is it the first two books got going very, very quickly, whereas this book, which is about the same length, is taking so long to get going? And that's what I'm saying. It's sitting there thinking, is it a slow burner? Because it's not bad. It's just not great. It's one of those, like, when you read so many of these books. Granted, I've only read two so far, but when you read these books, then you have a fantastic experience. You kind of hope that carries on. You kind of hope that the first two are brilliant, so the third one's got to be brilliant. And then you get there and you're like, oh, this is not what I was expecting. So I'm in a bit of a weird, conflicting mood, because one part of me wants to say, well, I'm not enjoying it, because I'm not. But at the same stage, I'm sitting there because, well, maybe it's a slow burn, because there are moments where I'm sitting there thinking, like, it feels like Stephen King, which is a positive. I'm a big fan of The Blob and a big fan of The Stuff. Those two sort of cheesy movies, I love them both. I love the idea of slime and goo and like living sort of postural sort of visceral sort of gooey slime monsters that just devour people and dissolve them and strip them of their skin and flesh and stuff like that. I love the idea of that. So again, another positive. Again, the main character of Evan is strange, and how he's with his aunt. Again, I will admit the story itself doesn't make no sense. The whole idea that you'd leave a young boy with his great aunt that he doesn't know for 2 weeks. She's deaf, so she refuses to do sign language. She refuses to read lips, so she doesn't talk to him. The only time she talks to him is when they're doing food and stuff like that. She only really cares about herself and her cat. The young boy, he's all alone. All he's got is his dog. And so there are certain things where I'm sitting there thinking, I just don't like the idea. Like I just think if I read this as a kid, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. And reading it now as an adult, as now having read tons and tons of hundreds of books, still, I'm sitting there thinking, well, that just makes no sense. Why would you leave a young child with somebody he doesn't know, who is deaf and refuses to have any sort of contact or verbal sort of communication with the child, and then not worry about him or not phone him all the time, or when he's upset or worried and phoning you, be like, I don't want to be here anymore. You're just going, oh, no, you'll be fine. Yeah, you'll be fine. Like, I know it was the 90s, but even then, you still cared about your children. So it's just one of the, like, there's small things like that. I'm thinking, okay, but like I said, the main positive I'm taking from now is it does feel like like a Stephen King sort of story where he's getting to know his neighbor Andy, and them two have got a friendship going on. Then you've got the two bullies, and they think they're better than everybody, and they're being horrible and stuff like that. So you've got that sort of story, but it's just the fact of, I want the slime to do something. So far, all the monster blood is doing, it's getting bigger. That's it. There was a moment where it could have gone really, I know it's a kid's book, but still, it's Goosebumps, somewhat gruesome. Like, there's a moment in it, in the story, where the dog eats some of the monster blood, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go. The dog's going to kill the dog. It's going to eat the dog from the inside, or it's going to be like The Thing or something like that. And there was one moment in the story when Evan goes outside and sees the dog, and the dog is drooling, is foaming from the mouth because it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And as it's growing, its collar stayed the same size, so it's being strangled, like it's dying. And I'm like, oh my god, like, that's gruesome. Don't get me wrong, but still the same thing of like, oh, here we go. Like, is it going to get too big? Is it going to be like a chest burster, or is it, or does Evan going to take the take the collar off. The dog can breathe, but then licks Evan with the slime on his face, and he spreads some sort of disease. Like this is where my brain was going, because I wasn't being given it in the story. My horror brain was going, okay, here we go. It could be this, it could be that, and it just wasn't. It's just the fact that the dog's getting bigger. That's it. Evan's having nightmares that the dog is growing to be a monster, but that hasn't happened actually in the story. That's just happened in Evan's dreams. So it's like, okay, where are we going? And that's the main thing. And that's what worries me in a little bit of a way, is the fact of, like I said, I'm 66% of the way through. I'm almost done. And again, it doesn't take long to finish these books. And I'm hoping that by the end, something happens, that it pays off, that the slow burn pays off, and I'm like, okay, now I get it, and then I can appreciate the rest of the book and what it was doing leading up to that. Because like I said, these are only short novels. These are not like Stephen King sort of Dean Koontz long epics. No, these are just small, short sort of stories. So that's kind of what I'm worried about at the moment. But so far, I'll give it a chance. Like I said, it's a Goosebumps book. It's a kid's book. It's not really written for me. Like, I'm not the demographic. It is really for young teens and early readers. Me as an adult, it's not for me. So I have to have that into perspective as well. So there's a few things sort of nibbling at me at the moment, but I'm going to give it the satisfaction of the doubt. I'm going to give it a go, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be it will have a payoff that I'm looking forward to, or I'm hoping for. So that's all I've got to say so far about Monster Blood. Obviously, when I'm done, which won't take me long now, I'll rinse through it quite quickly, and then I will let you know my sort of first impressions, story, characters, and overall thoughts. So until then, I will see you all in a minute. And welcome back, everybody. So thank you very much for rejoining me for Monster Blood. I know the introduction wasn't a very positive one, to be honest, but I will say, in my first impressions, it did get better. Not a lot, but it did get better. It did improve. For me, honestly, my sort of end impressions of this book is that it's a 3-star. It's a middle of the road. It's a good book, but nothing more. But it's not bad, so it's nothing less. It's just an all-round good book, an all-round decent, all right Goosebumps book, specifically for that twist at the end for me, which I will get on to talking about that a bit later. But overall first impressions, it is a slow burn sort of story. It is a story that you have to kind of sit with for a while. And admittedly, it didn't start getting to where I would have wanted it to be in terms of the monster blood coming to life, acting like the stuff, acting like the blob, moving, hunting, stalking, bouncing around, enveloping sort of people, absorbing birds and other bits of things, all bits of life, just in sort of suffocating all and killing and dissolving humans, very much like the blob, like the stuff. And eventually does get to that point, about 73% of the way. By that stage, again, these books aren't very long, you're near the end. So it's one of those where that side of it, you have to work up to that. But it kind of makes sense when you get to the end. It gets to the twist that, I'll be honest, I didn't see coming. I did not see that twist coming at all. And I do appreciate it. Did it make it better? Not really, but it kind of made more sense. I was like, all right, fair enough. Now I understand it was a slow burn for a reason. But yeah, overall, sort of the first impressions are stick with it. You know what I mean? Stick with it. It does get better eventually, but it's hard to say this would be one where I would be able to go, oh yeah, Monster Blood, I highly recommend that one. I'm like, no, like Monster Blood, it's all right. If you want to skip it, you can. But, if you want to give it a go, just get ready for a little bit of a sort of a slow burn, but it does have somewhat of a decent payoff at the end. As for sort of the story, so as I mentioned in the introduction, this story revolves around Evan. His dad's got a new job in Atlanta, and his mom basically goes, well, what can we do with Evan? And like the dad's like, well, we'll give him to my great aunt, Kathleen. She's deaf, but I haven't seen her in years, but we'll just palm him off on her. And they do. And to be honest, that doesn't really sit well with me. I know I mentioned it in the introduction, but it's true. It doesn't sit well with me that you'd get somebody who is deaf, who has no form of communication, who doesn't want to communicate at all, or lip read or anything like that. you wouldn't leave her with basically a stranger, somebody that you didn't know, who was like, and who has no way of communicating. He's going to be like, lonely on his own for however long you leave him there for. Because I think in total, I think they leave him there for almost a month thereabouts. I think in total, it was meant to be 2 weeks, and it was a bit more. So I think overall, it's about 3 to possibly 4 weeks in total. But even so, that's a long time to leave a child on their own with somebody that they don't know, or can't have any sort of proper communication with. So that didn't sit right with me. And I think it would have been the same when I was younger. Probably been a bit more creepy when I was younger, but as an adult, I'm also looking at it and going, that's not very clever of the parents. Anyway, it's a kid's book. Moving on. So he gets left with his great aunt Kathleen, and she's trying her best to kind of, calm him down, make him feel a bit sort of at home, but she's got a sort of a strange sort of sense of humor. Evan's bored. But he goes around the neighborhood with his dog, meets a lovely young lady called Andy, and they have a good little relationship together. And they go to the local toy store, and Evan has been given like $10 by his mom for food. He ends up spending like $2 on a can of old Monster Blood slime, and he gets the slime, takes it back to his aunt's house. His aunt has a look at it. He goes, "Oh, you kids have fun." And next thing you know, him and his mate are playing with this monster blood, and as the story goes on, slowly but surely, this monster blood starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and starts to grow and starts to bubble and make noises, and he'll start sucking sort of sounds. And whenever Evan touches it, when it's really, really big, it starts to suck him in, and he starts to drag him in, and he has to use all his force to pull himself back out and stuff like that. And also his dog Trigger. He's little cocker spaniel, tiny little dog, eats a little bit of this monster blood and keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And like as an introduction, this idea, I love the idea of it. Like this monster blood, now they've opened the can, it is now open, it's alive, it's growing and growing and growing. And it's making the sucking noises and the bubbling, and it's getting bigger, and it's sucking Evan in, so he can't touch it and stuff like that. And the dog's getting bigger now. He's had some. I thought with the dog it would have gone in the sort of in the vein of, the dog getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually turning into some sort of Cronenbergian sort of monster, or something out of the stuff where it just blows up and loads of like green goo comes out of its mouth, and then it infects somebody else. Like, I know that's a bit too far for a Goosebumps book, but still, these are young adult sort of novels. Like in R.R. Stein, and from my experience of reading the past two books, he doesn't seem somebody who would shy off from that sort of subject matter. But no, that never happens with the dog, sadly. Which, even though I love dogs and I don't want dogs to be hurt, but again, I would have for that story, just for the scare, freaky sort of goosebumpsy factor of like, oh my god, the dog's exploded, gore and blood and sort of slime and monster blood everywhere. And so the story goes on. Dog's getting bigger and bigger, and this is where it does feel like a Stephen King sort of novel with the slow burn. You get introduced to the bullies, and they're twins, and they're very dumb as rocks, to be honest. And then Evan keeps having nightmares that his dog is getting bigger and bigger, and then turns into a giant monster, and he's hunting down the twins and kills them in the woods and stuff like that. And he's having these nightmares that are coming true, and he's also getting nightmares of the monster blood that's growing, getting bigger and bigger. So there's things like that where I'm like, okay, this is interesting. It just takes so long to get to the point where the monster blood is so big, and now it's starting to come alive, and it's starting to it, like a bird lands and a bird just goes in and gets dissolved. The two twins come in, try to beat up Evan and Andy while they're running away from this monster blood. They're like, look, listen, you don't want to mess around. Like, there's something behind us dangerous. We've got to get out. And obviously the twins don't believe him. And then next thing you know, it jumps at them. Andy and Evan move out the way. It basically succumbs, envelops, that's the word I'm looking for, the two twins, the two bullies. They get sort of dissolved and put inside it as well, and it's just getting bigger and bigger, and it's chasing them in the house. And now one thing I will do here is I tend to stay away from spoilers, but I feel like it's such an interesting twist that I will talk about the ending here. So again, if you haven't read Monster Blood, or if you have any interest in reading Monster Blood, sort of stop at this point, and then sort of move on. But if you are interested, I'm going to sort of spoil the ending for you. It is a very clever ending, to be honest. But what I will say before I get onto it, I will reinstate the fact of, even though the ending was clever, I didn't see it coming, it didn't fully redeem it. It only really redeemed it 1 star. If it wasn't for the ending, I would have given it a 2 star, which is a very below average, sort of not very. It's meh, basically. It's a very meh, so I wouldn't really recommend it to everybody. But it was this ending that made it up for me to be worthy of sort of a 3 star, very good sort of middle of the road average sort of book. Anyway, so while they're being chased, they get chased by this monster blood. Evan and Andy make it back to his aunt's house, and he's saying to his aunt, like, I'm so sorry. Like, we've made this monster blood. It's getting bigger. We can't stop it. And the aunt's freaking out, and it leaves the kids, and it chases the aunt into the house. So the kids chase the monster blood and the aunt into the house. And the aunt is like, it's my fault. It's me. Like, I created this, I'm going to die because of my creation. And the kids stop like, well, what do you mean you created it? And she's like, I put a spell on it. And then you start thinking, oh, God, like the aunt's a witch, or the aunt's some sort of sorcerer sort of thing, where she's always wearing like bone charms around her, and she acting weird and stuff like that. And you say, oh, God, like the aunt's a witch. She did it. And I think I never saw that. That comes out of nowhere, but like I didn't see it coming. So I quite like the surprise, the twist. And then it's like, and it was like, well, it was you. Why did you do that? Why are you trying to kill me and my friend for? Like, you're my aunt. Like, what did I do? And then it turns out that it wasn't the aunt that did it. It was Sarah Beth. Sarah Beth is her aunt's cat. And the cat transforms, goes into this like ghostly apparition sort of thing, and then transforms into this big, glorious, skinny sort of woman. And basically, it turns out 20 years ago, put a curse on the aunt so that the aunt is deaf and is not allowed to lip read. It basically can't do any, and it has no contact, whatever, is deaf. And the aunt has to serve Sarah Beth, the real witch, forever, for servitude forever. We don't actually find out as to why, but you realize that when Andy and Evan first get the kind of monster blood and take it back home, and the aunt wants to look at it, the aunt sort of is forced by Sarah Beth the cat, which is a great name for a witchy cat, by the way. I love the name. Basically makes the aunt put a spell, a curse, onto the monster blood, and then it gives it back. Now, the reason for this is the fact of one of the deals that Sarah Beth had with the aunt was that she would never have any company, that she would always be alone, and that it would always just be Sarah Beth and Kathleen. It would always be them two. And Kathleen would always be the servant, and that's it. So when the boy came, she wanted to get rid of him, but she couldn't get rid of him naturally, so she had to do something. So when he brought the monster blood back and put a curse on it, that's why the monster blood is coming alive. That's why it's getting bigger. It's because it's been cursed to kill and to eat, and to Evan and Andy as well, because Andy knows too much now, so it's going to kill her as well. And it's going to potentially kill the aunt as well if she doesn't do what Sarah Beth says. And it's a brilliant twist. Don't get me wrong, it's a very clever twist, and like I said, it's one that I didn't see coming. So I have to give it an extra point for that. It's just a shame, and that it took so long for it to get to that point. Like, if they would have been a few more clues, because there are hints in there that the aunt might be the witch. It's never stated a witch. They never use the words. But if you know your occult, or if you've read a lot of horror stories, you can kind of work out that there's something off about the aunt. So there are clues here and there that maybe the aunt is a bit not more than what she seems, sort of thing. Because I had the theory, like, maybe the aunt really can hear, and she's not deaf. She's just playing the fool, and that she is quite clever and quite smart and quite mischievous, and that she is deliberately being creepy and weird because she is creepy and weird because, potentially she is a witch or some sort of thing like that. So I thought, well, that's where it's going to go. And when it came, oh God, I'm going to be killed by my own spell, that's when I thought, oh, here we go, But when it came, it was the cat. I was like, that's clever. Didn't see that coming. So I have to give it for that. But like I said, it's just a shame it took so long to get there. What I would have preferred, a lot like Welcome to Dead House, a lot like Stay Out of the Basement, if the book, instead of taking its time to get to the monster blood eating people, slowly just have more things, a few more scenes, a few more bits of line in certain chapters, when, like, Evan goes to sleep, for example, and the monster blood roams and goes out and then eats, I don't know, somehow opens the fridge and eats things out the fridge, or is eats birds, or eats the cat, or eats the dog. And then Evan wakes up the next morning and there's like a slime trail that leading up to where the monster blood is, and now the monster blood is strangely gotten bigger, and now it's changed color and there's different shapes in it, but he can't work out what the shapes are, that sort of thing. Or when him and Andy are playing with it and throwing at each other, as when they rip it apart, a skull falls out. I know it sounds quite gruesome, but I'm just trying to think of some things they could do in the universe of Goosebumps where it's not too gruesome, it's not too terrifying, but again, it still gives you goosebumps. Because again, with Welcome to Deadhouse, and I know in that story, R.L. Stein has said himself that he went a bit too far with the spooks, but I appreciated it for that because it felt a bit too scary. Whereas, to start at the basement wasn't scary. That was more of a murder mystery. And this one is more of a slow burn sort of creature sort of story. And I like that. I like that with every book so far has been something different, and it has had a different feel and genre to it, a different sort of way of telling a story, which I appreciate for that because it makes it more fun. But it's still a Goosebumps story. So I would have had a few more bits and pieces where it was just a little bit gruesome, because you're talking about a monster blood. You're talking about goo, about slime, like the stuff, like the blob. You're talking about something like this mass that just envelops everything, eats everything in its path. So have those sort of moments, sprinkle them here and there. So as you're reading through, you're like, oh, there's something about this monster blood. I know it's eaten something, or I know it's devoured the cat or the pigeons in the neighborhood, or whatever you want to do. I, as a reader, know that, but Evan doesn't know that. So that gives you more of an investment of like, look, Evan, don't stop playing with this, throw it away because it's going to eat you. But he doesn't know that in the story. So it gives you more encouragement. It gives you more engagement into the story. Again, this is me having read like 1,000+ books in my lifetime, where like I'm starting to put things together of like, do this, do that. Again, I'm not a writer. Like I'm a bit of an amateur writer, but I'm no R.L. Stein. He's written way more books than Stephen King. Like this guy knows what he's doing in terms of creating and weaving a story. It's just the fact of that's what I would have done. I would have had those hints in earlier to kind of just bring in a lot more of the monster blood, have more sort of worrying fears and creeps and goosebumps really from this thing getting bigger and bigger. Because if you're just telling me it's getting bigger but it's not doing anything, I'm not terrified. I'm just annoyed or is somewhat bored. I'm like, come on, do something. I feel like I'm gonna have to go and jump in the store and start poking the slime with a stick and be like, come on, do something, I shouldn't have to do that in a story this short and in a Goosebumps story. It should just get going, or what I've come to realize so far, it should feel like it should get going a lot quicker than it does. But who knows? This, like I said, each book is different. So there might be a few other books in this trilogy that are slow burns, and there might be some that are quick. And like I said, I appreciate that they're all different. But what you've got to imagine, even though I'm only looking at the first 16, that's still a lot of books. But there's about 48 or 46 in total in the original run, in the original 90s run of the Goosebumps. So you've got to imagine, let's say for argument's sake, in those 46 books, not all of them are going to be diamonds. Some of them are going to be gold, some of them are going to be iron, some of them are going to be sort of slag, some of them are going to be sort of like, a fool's gold. You know what I mean? It's going to look like gold, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like you're going to get ones that aren't great, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Because all the others are. But I don't know. It's a very average middle of the road book. It's not good. Well, no, it's not brilliant, but it's not terrible. It's good, and mostly good for that ending, in my opinion. But overall, that's all my thoughts really. Is the fact of, if you'd want to skip Monster Blood, I could understand. And I know that this is probably one of the most popular stories, or at least it seems like it is, because I think R.R. Stein made 2 more after this. I think he made Monster Blood 2 and Monster Blood 3. I think there's even a Monster Blood 4. I don't really know. I'm sure there's 2 more after this, but even so, it must have been a popular series. So for that ending and for the idea and concept of what it is and how that they made more, I am excited to read more of the Monster Blood books to see where they go. Have they got the same characters? Is Evan and Andy, are they in the story? Is it other people? Does the witch come back? So I'm interested in that. Now that we've had this book to set up the idea behind Monster Blood and the witch, that whatever comes in Monster Blood 2, whether it be a continuation, has already done all the setup. So that now, hopefully, in those books, we can get a lot more of the goo and the blood doing something and actually eating people and things and all that jazz. So that's my hope for the future in terms of this little mini sub series in the Goosebumps books. But yeah, that's all I've got to say really about the book. Before we end, what I always like to do with these reviews is the editions that I'm reading always have a Q&A at the end, a Q&A with R.L. Stine. And I would imagine these are questions that kids have asked Stein, and he's given their answer. And I always like doing these on the episodes because I feel like it's just a lot more. It's like a bit of trivia. It's a bit more fun, especially when it's directly from the author as well. It makes it a bit more interesting. So, first question is: what's the creepiest toy you had as a child? Was it creepier than Monster Blood? R.L. Stine says, I had a toy skeleton, the kind you were supposed to put together, but I never put it together because I thought the bones were real. I found out years later that they were all plastic. That's funny. Next question. Do you think you would be tempted to eat Monster Blood? R.L. Stine says, only if it tastes like banana cream pie. Next question is, if so, what would you do once you were a giant? R.R. Stein says, eat the world's biggest banana cream pie. He really likes banana cream pie. The next question is, speaking of huge, as in huge success, Goosebumps has sold hundreds of millions of books worldwide. When did you first know that Goosebumps was a success, and how did you celebrate? R.R. Stein says, I was in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio, driving to a bookstore for a book signing. I remember I was stuck in a huge traffic jam and I was really worried I would be late and growing more and more annoyed at all the traffic. When we finally neared the bookstore, I realized that the traffic jam was caused by all the people who were coming to see me. I celebrated by signing hundreds of books. That's a good answer. Next question is, what's the weirdest fan letter you've ever received? He goes, it's the weirdest and also my favourite. Here goes. Dear R.L. Stine, I have read 40 of your books and I think they are really boring. Why'd you read all 40? Why'd you read 40 then? If after, like, wouldn't you know after one or two books this isn't for you? Why read 40 and then go, you know what? I'm going to write them a letter that are all terrible. Like, why did you keep going? You know, I mean, why waste your time? There's only a small amount of time in life. If you didn't know after the first two, that's your fault. And if you only realised it at 40, that's not Stein's fault. That's you. You know, he has your money now because you've spent all of the money buying the book. So he's laughing. Like you're the one that didn't stop reading. But that's funny. It's like, why read 40 books and then go, you know what, it's boring, I'm going to write a letter. I'm like, well, no, you've wasted your life. Don't bother wasting paper and a stamp and a letter and other people's at the postal service time. You know, you've already wasted your time. Why waste other people's time? Anyway, I don't know why I went on a rant there. That makes no sense. Either way. Next question. So, next question was, Monster Blood returns in the all-new Goosebumps Horrorland 3. Monster Blood for breakfast. Could you reveal some hints about other villains who might be returning? Now, this might be a bit of a spoiler, especially for me, obviously, but for other people as well. So if you want to skip this part, that's understandable. So he goes, you just can't keep a Goosebumps villain down. Don't be surprised if we get another visit from a certain mask. You know the one I mean, right? To find out how R.L. Stine dressed for Halloween, pick up the new collector's edition of The Haunted Mask and look in the back of the book. So there's that. Yeah, I love these editions. Like, I'm reading these on Kindle, and I love these Kindle editions that they've got the Q&A at the back, which I love. This idea that there's a little bit extra, you're getting more bonus features, and it makes it fun for the content as well. What I love, there's a recipe for Monster Blood Punch. So it goes, when you're dying of thirst, nothing quite hits the spot like Monster Blood. If fresh Monster Blood isn't sold in your neighborhood, and we hope it's not, then try this tasty substitute. Makes 4 servings, ingredients. Again, this is American, so please, you know, when I say Jello, I mean, I would imagine it's jelly. It goes 1 pack lime Jello, 2 cups white grape juice and green food colouring. Preparation: prepare Jello as instructed on the box. When Jello is set, take a fork and squish it into tiny pieces. In a medium-sized punch bowl, combine Jello and grape juice and mix well. Add a few drops of green food coloring until the mixture resembles fresh Monster Blood. Spoon mixture into cups, slurp and enjoy. Although Monster Blood is usually green, don't be afraid to try new color combinations. Green Jello with cranberry juice, yellow Jello with apple juice, different food coloring, etc. Warning: if you hear strange gurgling noises coming from the punch bowl, run for your life. I love that. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and there's loads more, and I could get into more and more and more, but I won't because I think I've done all the fun bits. Anyway, the main thing is Monster Blood. It's a very middle of the road book. Whether you love it or you hate it, it's one of those where you can either skip or you can read it. But I feel like the ending kind of makes up for it a little bit, not a lot, but just a bit. But yeah, so that's my thoughts and feelings on Monster Blood. My final Goosebumps review for this year of 2025. I look forward to going into next year. We've got Say Cheese and Die. We've got The Haunted Mask, which I will say here, The Haunted Mask is my favorite Goosebumps story of all time. I've never read the book, but whenever Goosebumps was on the TV, I always loved the Haunted Mask's story. It was always my favorite story because I just loved the idea of a mask that you couldn't take off, and that slowly but surely you were turning into whatever that mask was, whatever creature or person or whatever the mask resembled, you would slowly turn into. I remember the one episode, remember the first episode was a monster mask, and then there was another one where it was an old man's face, and the kid was slowly but surely turning into an old man. And I remember the kid is like an old man, he's coughing, he's got a walking stick, he's really struggling, he's a proper old man, and he comes out of the bush and he's trying to say, help me, coughing, and these kids are running away. I remember that story so vividly in my head. So I'm looking forward to that and all the other stories as well. And again, the dummy. So we're going to get Slappy. So there's a lot to look forward to next year. But I do hope that you've enjoyed the books I've done so far this year. I've had an absolutely fantastic time. And yeah, I just hope people stick around for next year. I did hope for this to come out in Halloween, but I was very busy over the Halloween season, and I realized how close I was to my 200th episode. So I wanted my 200th episode to be something a bit special. And by the time this episode comes out, you will know that episode was The Hobbit, the animated movie The Hobbit. So I wanted it to be special. That's why I had to move this one to the end of November. But it's Christmas soon. Well, very, very soon, actually. It's in a day or two, or shall we say, the Christmas season. Even though people say Christmas is not until the 25th of December, I'm like, humbug. Christmas is the 1st of December for me. So Christmas season's coming soon. I've got a lot of Christmas stuff planned, a lot of Christmas movies, a lot of bonus special things to come as well in between the days. So there's going to be a lot of Christmas gifts coming your way for the podcast. So please do stick around for that. Stick around again till next year for more Goosebumps stuff. If you haven't listened to any of the other stuff I did, Welcome to Dead House or Stay Out the Basement, again, by all means, please do go back and check those out as well. They're on Spotify. They're on all podcasting platforms that you can find the podcast. They're on YouTube, so don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow the podcast on Spotify, rate the podcast 5 stars, all the things you can do to let me know that you've listened. And I really do appreciate it, because the further I can go up the algorithm, the more people get to see what I do, and eventually the podcast will get bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to my review of Monster Blood. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy. And I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye.